Hi, Nick.
Hi, Greg.
Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Let me briefly introduce you to our audience, if it's needed, and then we can start with the interview.
Okay.
In his long career as journalist, author, and producer, Nicholas Gage has spent the first half as an investigative reporter and foreign correspondent, and the second writing 7 books and producing several films, one of which was nominated for an Academy Award as Best Picture. He was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize 6 times and received numerous awards for his reporting. His books include Greek Fire, A Place for Us, and Eleni, his account of his mother's life and death during the Greek Civil War. Translated into 32 languages, it received the top literary prize of 1984 from the Royal Society of Literature of Great Britain. Gage's next book, A Place for Us, was widely praised as a moving saga of the immigrant experience. His most recent work, Greek Fire, is a dual biography of Maria Callas and Aristotle Onassis. In between writing books, he has worked in motion pictures and has received 5 honorary degrees, including a doctorate in 1985 from Boston University. Mr. Gage, who established a scholarship fund at Boston University in memory of his mother, has been active in a number of philanthropic and human rights organizations, for which he has raised several $million and is an archon of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Nick, I will start with your book, Eleni, published in 1983. In 1947, during the Greek Civil War, Eleni, your mother, was arrested and executed by communist fighters for trying to save you and your siblings from ending up in a communist country, as the fighters were taking children with them on their retreat. Some choose to forget traumatic experiences, others choose to remember. You clearly belong to the second group. At what point in life did you decide to explore your family history and to make your family's experience public?
In the 7th grade, when an English teacher that I had noticed that I had some ability to write and mentored me and started me on a career as a journalist and a writer. That gave me the means to be able to research and tell what happened to my family, and particularly to my mother, during the Greek Civil War. And I determined then, at the age of 13, I think I was 14, to go back and find out all the details of my mother's trial and execution. And but I knew that until then I had to develop the skills. So I became a reporter. I went to for the local paper in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I grew up. Then I went to study journalism at Boston University, and then I won a scholarship to the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism, and I began a career with the Associated Press, but I quickly turned to investigative reporting to develop the skills to root out the story of my own family. And I became an investigative reporter for the Boston Herald Traveler and then the Wall Street Journal. And finally, at the age of 30, I was the chief investigative reporter for the New York Times. And I did very well there in exposés. I had the first tape in the Watergate story. I had the first big expose of Spiro Agnew. I covered the mafia wars. I went all through Latin America to detail the drug trade there, and I did so well that the executive editor called me in and said, "Anything you want in the paper, within reason." I said, "I want to be the bureau chief in Athens." he said, we don't have a bureau in Athens. I said, start one. And he did. He said he would if I gave him 3 more years in the States. I agreed, and they sent Steve Roberts and Koki Roberts to Athens to open the bureau. And 3 years later, I replaced them and began the search of my mother's story, which was very difficult at the beginning because I had so much to cover. I covered all of the countries between Greece and Iran. I covered the Iranian Revolution. I had the first interview with the Shah, the last interview with the Shah, the first with Khomeini, and I covered civil wars in Lebanon, uprisings in Turkey, and so I knew if I was going to really focus on my mother's story, I had to leave the Times, and I did and focused on the story. I tracked down everyone who was still alive that was in my village when my mother was arrested, tortured, tried, and bogus show trial and then executed. And I went all over Eastern Europe. I had more than 300 interviews. And I went back and wrote the story, and I thought it would sell 5,000 copies to Greek Americans. I basically wrote it for my nephews and nieces and for my own children so that they would know the price that was paid for the kind of life they were leading. And but the book took off. It was serialized in many magazines. We had 70 movie offers from everyone and all the studios, and it moved on. And I didn't go back to the Times. I continued writing books and making films.
So what does it mean for you to make this story public? Does it mean justice? Is it the truth? Is it your version of history that drives you?
Well, it's not my version. It's I'm a reporter. I've always been a reporter, and it's the facts that drive me. I wrote a book that all the names were real, all the dates were real, all the places were real. People tried to find errors in my book. The book was serialized by the German magazine Stern. They sent 5 reporters to Greece to talk to people I had talked to try to find mistakes in the book. None of them appeared. I think the answer to the question is the last line of a review by C.M. Woodhouse, the British historian, who said Eleni is one of the rare books in which the power of art recreates the full historical truth.
Understanding what happened and revealing all this information, discovering it. What was it like for you to be back to Greece and in the place where all that happened?
Well, before we left the village, my mother told me to throw a black stone. That was a
Mavri Petra.
a term, Rixe Mavri Petra, that was used in those days, not to come back because of the pain and that our family and all the people living in those villages went through. And it's the one request of my mother that I didn't follow fully. And there are 2 reasons for this. One, Greece is so beautiful as a country. It just I've been all over the world as a reporter. I never found any places that were dramatically beautiful as Greece. And also, despite the horrors that we experienced in the hands of fellow Greeks, I think that I admire greatly the Greek people, their vision, their endurance, their ability to survive through centuries of occupation, where they were reduced to abject serfs by the Turks. Their daring. You have to understand who we are. Every civilization before the Greeks were tyrannies. They were ruled by despots, by kings, emperors. Why was that? Because when people began to form communities in prehistoric times, they knew that they had to have order, and the only way that they thought order could be achieved was through a strong leader. The Greeks were the first to dare to believe that you could have order and freedom, and they produced democracy, and that is the values they produce are the values in which the whole world functions today. So when one talks about preserving our heritage, my God, who has a heritage like us, and why wouldn't anybody fortunate enough to be born to that history not want to know as much about it as possible, to know about their connections to it as possible.
So while you were doing your research, how difficult was it?
Well, because I had the training as a reporter, I was very successful because, for example, most of the people from my village were scattered behind the Iron Curtain. I was doing my research in the early 1980s, and most of these countries, most of our people were in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Russia, and so I knew, for example, from covering the mafia, that the way to get into a story is to find common interests with the people. So I would, for example, approach communist leaders and that were in the village at the time, and I would say, I'm writing a book about the Greek Civil War in the Murgana Mountains, and they felt that because I went to talk to them, that I must be writing the kind of propaganda books that they were used to, promoting their point of view. I didn't. They never asked me what is the book about, and I just asked them about the events that happened in the village, and they told me about the crime, the killings and so forth, but they blamed others for it, and so by cross-checking the events, for example, if someone in Grozno, Poland, told me about an event they witnessed, and someone in Tashkent, Russia, told me about the same event, and then I knew it was true. This was a basic rule of investigative reporting. You needed two independent sources that did not communicate with each other to tell you the same thing. And so I used those techniques that I use as a reporter, and I was able to collect information. That's why nobody has ever sued me in Greece. Nobody has ever come up with any mistakes or misrepresentations in my book. Every name, every detail is true.
Did you have many surviving relatives back in Ya when you
No,
visited?
no. Unfortunately, many years have passed, and most of people have died, including 3 of my 4 sisters.
I see. Uh, okay. Moving to your second book, A Place for Us.
Right.
It was published in 1989 and narrates your family's immigrant experience in the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, in the 1950s.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us about that experience?
Well, that was kind of the high point of Greek immigrant culture, I think, in the 50s, because those that had come in the first half of the century uh, was still tied to their Greek traditions, so that their children, who were first generation, uh, may have been born in the States, but they spoke Greek. They learned Greek at home. They observed the holidays. They were active in the church, and then there were new immigrants like me and my sisters who came right after the World War II, and replenished those communities. So the Greek identity in those communities was very strong, and it was an ideal opportunity to establish institutions that would preserve that identity. But unfortunately, that wasn't done. For example, uh, what should have been set up were by private schools that taught Greek, that studied the classics, that were as good as the top private schools of the uh, Episcopalians and the French and the Italians. And this wasn't done. There was an attempt to set up a university, the Hellenic College, but you can't create an ocean if you don't have rivers, and so there weren't the secondary schools to supply the university, and it faded. So I think there were a lot of missed opportunities, but I think with the development of the new technology, such as this, I think people who feel their Greekness communicate with each other through the internet, through Facebook, through many social media, and a sense of identity is still maintained. But frankly, we're losing, most of our young people have no sense of their Greek heritage, and it's sad because there is no greater. I mean, think about it. 3 of the 4 greatest dramatists were Greek. The only non-Greek was Shakespeare. I mean, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, the greatest philosophers, the greatest sculptors, the greatest poets, and no few other cultures are as rich as ours, and it's a shame that people are dismissing it from their lives, because it can enrich their lives tremendously.
Yeah, I should note that with family history and genealogy, there are some young people that start to get interested, which is good news.
Yeah, that is. But
Let me, sorry. So when you were growing up in Worcester, so you come from Epirus.
Mhm.
Were there many Epirotes in Worcester?
Oh yeah, it's one of that's where the Pan-Epirotic Federation of America was founded. It's one of the main centers of Epirot settlements. So I found many relatives from nearby villages, from our area, from the Morgana Mountains. My father brought over about 100 relatives, and I would file the applications, and he would sign them, and they would come in droves, cousins and nephews, nieces.
Wow. A little Ipiros in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it was. It was.
So do you think that that helped you integrate, or did it create like a more secluded, Greek community that is not very much in contact with the American?
No, the thing about America is that it's so free, so open, so inviting. So they offer so many opportunities that it's irresistible, and you're drawn into it. So to me, there's no worry about being secluded and isolated in a Greek community. That happened in countries where the general environment was hostile, like in Egypt, in Turkey, and other places. But in the United States, the draw, the pull of the local culture is overwhelming. So the struggle is how to retain your Greek identity, not how to assimilate. Assimilate is an irresistible force in America. Assimilation.
So how do you perceive the modern Greek American identity as opposed to when you were growing up? What do you think that has changed?
Well, a lot of people have abandoned their Greek. When I was growing up, for example, there were university clubs, the Hellenic university clubs, gatherings of young people. They intermarried, and now they don't exist anymore. And I think the 1 in 10 Greeks marries another Greek, these days. So all those institutions that kept you connected to your Greek heritage, they have either disappeared or greatly weakened, and are barely not existent.
But has the notion of Greekness, has it changed?
Well, it depends of what Greekness. You're talking. There are two Greeks. As Patrick Lee Firmer said, there's the Hellenic Greek and Oromios. The Byzantine Greek. And I think there's the pride in the Hellenic Greek is still strong. The traditions of the Byzantine Greek are fading fast.
Yeah. There are still some Greeks, new arrivals to the US. Do you think they realize what you say about the importance of Greekness and the need to preserve it, or do you think that they are more than willing to rapidly assimilate?
Yeah, they are able to rapidly assimilate. For example, when I came, I had to learn the language. I didn't know a word of English when I arrived. Most of those who come now know English already, and they get jobs. They join organizations. They're able to jump in wholeheartedly. They rarely, for example, we have in Worcester, we have 10 colleges and universities, and there are a number of students from Greece in those colleges and universities. I rarely see any of them in church, you know, or in joining any of our organizations. It's not a pretty picture. But I hope technology strengthens the bonds, you know. I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying I remember when I came to the States, I was second grade of high school.
Yeah.
And although I never went to church when I was in Greece, in the States, I felt that it was very different. Like the church itself, it was different. I mean, it meant something else. It wasn't it was more about Greekness, and it symbolized something
Yeah,
unique.
I think that it's very difficult to maintain. The church is the Greek community in America, and I think it's very hard to maintain a Greek identity if you don't involve yourself in the local church. And uh, unfortunately, the churches don't reach out to new arrivals, to the colleges, uh, to the universities, to bring these young people, you know, into the communities, because they feel, you know, they'll graduate and they'll leave. You know, it's
Yeah.
not the thing. You know, it's. I think effort is needed from both the communities and from the individual students.
Yeah, it's something like a gap between the old Greek immigrant community and the new one.
There
The
is no old. The old is dead. I
Yeah,
mean, how many Greek-born uh, people do you know?
right.
In my community, for example, in my church, uh, I think maybe 5% were born in Greece. You know, so and they're not coming in great numbers uh, because of the European Union. Because Greece is in the European Union, they can go anywhere in Europe to work and be close to Greece and find equal opportunities in Europe. So they go to Europe. They don't come here.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Last question. How important do you think that family history research and genealogy is for the preservation of Greekness and Greek history?
I think it's crucial to strengthening the identity. If you care about where you came from, where your people came from, and you research the struggles that people went through to maintain their Greek identity. Epirus, for example, was not liberated from the Turks until 1913. Macedonia as well, and Thrace. My father passport says born in Turkey, you know. And he told me that his greatest moment in his life was when he got on a ship in Patras to sail for America, and he threw the fez that he had been wearing in Epirus into the sea. You know, I think it's important because for centuries, people that struggled, suffered to maintain their identity. And for us to treat it casually and to dismiss it, my, my God, what a heritage! You know, why would anybody want to do it? But unfortunately, a large number of people, you know, don't want to take the time to find out where they came from. and they lose a lot. It's very important to know who you are and to have a clear identity. And it strengthens your character, it strengthens your sanity, it strengthens your purpose and your values. And I think it's crucial, and it's enriched my life and the lives of my children, hopefully my grandchildren as well. It's a shame that not more Greeks are not researching their heritage, but I think they would find a very valuable treasure if they do.
Yeah. Yeah. As Greek ancestry, I can tell you that it's mostly Greek Americans, Greek Canadians, Greek Australians who are interested, especially older people. And maybe 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30 of the clients are from Greece, like living in Greece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is also shameful.
Yeah, I don't know, shameful. I mean, we live in
I mean, it's a pity.
Everybody has a choice to do what they want, but it's sad because, and it's because they are losing a lot. They're losing a lot.
Have you made your family tree?
My family tree? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. In fact, I have it in the walls of my house.
Okay.
In pictures.
How far back were you able to go?
1857.
Okay, that for Epiros, that's good.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, very little archival material has been preserved.
Yeah, 1857 is the farthest back.
Okay. I have no more questions to ask. Well, I have many, but we have to move to the next presentation. It was a great honor to have you here.
My pleasure, and I wish everyone well, and καλή χρονιά, υγεία και χαρές.